We're doing it. We're doing it. All right, everybody, welcome. Thank you for joining us. This is a webinar co-hosted by Summit Success and Answering Legal. Obviously, we have the great Doug Brown with us. My name is Nick Werker. I'm the marketing director at Answering Legal. The topic is how to grow your practice and avoid burnout 2, 5 habits that will help lead to a more balanced and successful legal life. So we want to talk about the 5 essential disciplines, and Doug is really going to guide the conversation for managing your law firm, which will not only lead to more clients for your practice, but a much more enjoyable legal life. So we just want to talk about some common obstacles to growth, escaping what we call the founder's problem, and how to not miss out on other client opportunities. So I'm going to scroll down. Here's what we're covering.
There we go.
Right. We're covering the common obstacles.
So this is the stuff that, everybody, Doug Brown, I'm an executive coach and chief learning officer at Summit Success International. I'm a recovering attorney turned business coach, entrepreneur, and business fixer. And so what we're going to talk, we'll have a conversation around the common obstacles to growth. So the founder's problem, and a lot of lawyers right now have a lot of clients, but they're not particularly happy with your clients. So if you don't have enough, we'll give you some strategies to get more, or maybe upgrade them to ones that you actually like working with. And we're going to do it in the context of the 5 things that I've seen over the last 25 years that will hold lawyers back from achieving the kind of growth and the kind of life that they want. We'll kind of go through them one at a time and share some strategies.
All right, let's start it.
All right.
So this is the common obstacles to growth that, when Doug and I got together and started talking about, what kind of value we could really offer on a webinar, these are the things that we both agreed are what we hear from a lot of attorneys. And obviously, if you're here, you identify with at least one of these, but we really want to focus on not having a clear destination or a goal, not focusing on getting the right mix of clients, really trying to do everything yourself, which is this real founder's problem, right? Where you start the business and you feel like you're responsible for everything and you're just in the weeds constantly. You don't know how to delegate, and failing to have these processes that will really set you up for success in the future. So I'm excited to have Doug. And Doug, I'm passing it over. Here's our essential discipline number 1.
Yeah. So, when I go out and talk with lawyers, and I ask them, so what is your goal for the end of the year? And I usually hear something like, I just want to match last year. I have to work as much as possible, and I need as many clients as possible. And the problem with that is it sets yourself up on this hamster wheel that you can never achieve as many as possible. It's not a defined goal. It's exhausting. You don't feel like you can get ahead. And at the end of the day, it's what leads to burnout. So what I spent many years in business as in-house counsel, and then doing startups and turnarounds. And then I taught innovation and entrepreneurship at an MBA level for 6 years. And I always figured that everybody knew what good planning disciplines were. And then I realized that just because I had learned them, other people had not. It was like I have a client, his name is Terry. He's a super busy litigator. And he's got another practice inside our practice group in a firm of as a general counsel to government agencies. And he's used to getting a ton of stuff done during the day. And when he came to me, it was, I feel like I'm playing whack-a-mole all day long. And he wanted help with the day-to-day, getting more work done with his team. And he knew there was a bigger picture that he needed to have happen. And he knew the model wasn't sustainable for him. So when you have a plan, you can have a understanding the baseline of where you are, then you have a roadmap of where you want to go, just like a business would. And that helps you set priorities and drives your daily actions, which is different than I see where people are responding to whatever email happens to fly in the door and whatever urgencies are going on. And they get to the end of the day, they're exhausted, and they realize they didn't have time to work on their own stuff. So if we can set clear priorities with a simple and resilient way to set goals and then measure progress, then it gives you a sense of control, which is something a lot of lawyers don't have.
So
And
I want to
yeah,
cut you off, Doug.
go ahead.
Because everybody that I talk to that has this problem, sometimes it'll be as simple as, I'm talking to somebody about why they could necessarily use something like my service, but I'm not going to get into that pitch. And they'll say, but I'm so busy, like I don't need any more new clients. I'm so busy. I'm trying to get all this stuff done anyway. Maybe, 6 months down the line, all that stuff that really is just cover for what you're talking about. Why do lawyers operate this way?
Well, the thing, I've thought a lot about that, and I realized that we've never really been taught how to do it. I mean, the law, we start as apprentices working for older lawyers. And if you were lucky enough to work for one who had a good planning discipline, then you're going to be better at it. But there's no training in law school. You don't have CLEs on how to do a plan. It's just assumed that you know how to do it. And then as technical experts, we as lawyers get so busy in the weeds and the details that we don't feel like we can afford to take the time to slow down and give this stuff some thought. And of course, Nick, the billable hours model is part of the problem, because if you're taking an hour to think about what you're going to do for the week and how to prioritize that, that's an hour that you're not going to get towards your billables.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not really valued the way it should be. So, the good news is that as I work with lawyers, a lot of the answers are already in your head. You just need the formula, the system, to allow yourself to step back. And what I write about in my blog is how to slow down to speed up. And when I first heard that, I thought, that's ridiculous. I got to just keep going quite fast. But it's like just driving your car fast towards California, hoping you're going to wind up where you want without putting anything in your GPS.
That's so interesting that I used to be a weightlifter, and I know I go off on tangents. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I've never done that.
Well, so I would do like the clean and jerk and the snatch, right? So for anybody who knows what that is, it's just this complicated way of picking up a big heavy bar off the ground. And everybody wants to do it really fast and yank and jerk. And that's how you injure yourself, which kind of is what we're talking about, right? Like you're going to mentally injure yourself and yet and experience real burnout. So we used to have a saying that was slow is fast, fast is strong, which, if you're going by the transitive property there, that slow is strong. And the reason that we say it like that is if you slow down the way that you're doing things mentally, then you can really speed up your process and really get these. I'm going to use the word process again, but you can get these processes in order that will allow you to replicate what you're doing at a much more sustainable rate and really allow you to focus on the work more so as opposed to like playing whack-a-mole, right? I can't get that image out of my head where like you're a busy lawyer and the phone is ringing. I got to get the phone. Or you're a busy lawyer and I got to go to court, but this is happening and I got to meet with this person and, I got to hire somebody. It's just all over the place. So when we're kind of evaluating how to plan, let's talk about that. Like how can we actually work on planning?
Yeah. So there's planning at different levels. And, I think we've done a whole thing, Nick, and on the podcast of time mastery and blocking out time at your best times of the day. And in the Reader's Digest version is you should be doing a weekly planning block, looking ahead at the things that are in your calendar and blocking off time for your stuff, putting the stuff you have to work on for your practice on the calendar, like any appointment. And so that's really tactical, and that's absolutely necessary. The and many lawyers are very good at that. The piece that is missing is backing up. And the piece that's driving dissatisfaction, Nick, is backing up to be clear on why you're doing this work in the first place, your values, your purpose. And because I see so many lawyers, they're busy, busy, busy over here. And I said, great, well, what do you value? Well, this. I said, okay, line them up. And they're out of alignment. So the big idea for planning, and we're getting in, we were recording this right before Thanksgiving in 2021. And this is a great time, but anytime's a great time. This is especially a great time to really start thinking about why you do what you do, why you represent the clients you do, why you work in the practice that you do, and how it lines up with your personal vision. And what is your vision for the next year? If you could create anything you wanted, what would it be? And for everybody who registered, we're going to send you some follow-ups that'll have our annual planning template and our quarterly plan. To illustrate the power of this, I had a client who is a family and criminal law practitioner, and he was deeply unhappy with what was going on. And I said, well, how much money do you want to make this year? And he said, well, as much as last year. I said, okay, well, how much was that? And he told me what the number is. And I said, okay, what's your billable rate? And he told me the billable rate. And I said, okay, I did the math. And I said, well, you need to bill and collect. I think his number was 20 hours a week. And I didn't use 52 weeks because you have vacation. So I usually use 42 weeks just to give you some room. And so that was his number. So now that he had the number, check back with him in 2 weeks. How's it going? He felt great. He was hitting the number because now he had it. He knew what he had to do to hit that number, and then he was beating it. So even that one simple example of setting a goal of what do you want to make for the year, how many hours do you need to bill, or if you don't bill, how many client matters do you need, gives clarity, and it's aligned with his purpose, because when he thought about it for the number of hours, he wanted to make sure he had time for the family. So this is the time, if you want to make sure you're avoiding this problem and taking advantage of this opportunity, answer yourself these questions. If you didn't have any barriers of any kind, you could have anything you wanted, what would that look like? Just write it down. And when lawyers, when I ask them this question, Nick, they say, what?
What do you mean?
They don't yeah, don't worry about how to get there. Just write it down. And then impact. What would that mean to you if you achieve that? What would that mean to your life, to your spouse, to your friends, to your family? And then, this is the lawyer piece, what happens if you don't get that? And write these things down. And then what's the first step? Because when you anchor all that in your values and you come up with just the first step, then it becomes real. And then you can use the lawyer's tactical brain to start putting it into action.
Somebody did this, what you're doing right now, to me, like 4 or 5 years ago, because what I was doing was rebranding really for my company. And somebody sat me down and said, well, what's your why? And when we figured it out, it's like, well, what do you do? Well, I answer phones for lawyers. Okay. But like that's not important. Who cares? Like that's not the important work that you do. Okay, well, I make sure that, lawyers aren't missing any revenue. No, that's not the important work. When we really dug into the why of what I do, or what this department or what this company does, what it does is we help people find the best legal representatives that they need during the times that they need. And it's not that like that's the lie that I tell myself to like wake up and go to work in the morning. That really empowers me to want to really get up in the morning and say like what I'm doing matters, right? I really truly believe that that's what I do. And I also love the whole, like, once you know the number, right? But even if it's based on 42 weeks, it just feels so much more manageable to have a target and hit the target or even exceed it. Like what's better than exceeding a goal, but it just feels so much more manageable than I got to get in because I have this giant goal that I have to hit at the end of my year. No, let's slow it down. Let's talk about a week. Let's talk about what you could do in a day and what are the first steps to do it. So I love that. Let's move on to, because we could talk about each thing for like an hour.
Yes,
each,
we
and
could.
I got to get everybody out of here. So focusing on the right clients, and I'm going to skip to the next one because I waited too long last time.
Well, that's fine. So a lot of lawyers, as I said, Nick, are super busy. And so they have fallen into the trap of they have many different kinds of clients. They're always shifting gears, trying to keep in touch with many areas of the law. And this doesn't mean you're trying to be 10 things. Even if you're trying to be 3 or 4 things, it's very difficult to keep up. And as a result, you take on a lot. You can wind up as having issues getting paid on time. And then you're sitting there and you know there's some disconnect for your purpose. So you're not enjoying the work. It's kind of a drag, which can lead to burnout. You're exhausted a lot of the time. You're not getting energy. You're one of the lawyer's worst fears is making mistakes. And then you get the feast or famine problem. And what happens? And we wake up at 3 a.m. saying, what happens if it all goes away? And, you know, one of my clients, David, is a partner in a general practice firm. And we talked about identifying who is the real ideal client, not just the legal problem they have, but the kind of person they are, what they do for a living. Talking about his worst clients, profiling the best and the worst. But what was missing was, as people came in the door, he didn't have any kind of system or process to either bring them to the door or to screen them properly. So it was all gut feel. So when we unpacked that, he actually came up with a list of criteria that he could then share with his staff and with himself to evaluate each of the new clients to see if they fit in the mold. And then as we did our work together and he'd get a new client, I'd say, great, are they an A, B, or C client? And then we'd review each one because we had a standard. So that's when you're dissatisfied, you want to upgrade your clients, it's useful to take a look back at which ones had made you feel the most alive, satisfied, and profitable, and then go for more of those, not just any fish that happens to jump in your boat.
I just want to say that I'm a big marketing and reviews kind of guy. And a lot of the people that I talk to, you know, I focus on helping people kind of clean up their reputation and get more clients. So every time I'm always looking at somebody's online reputation, especially when it comes to lawyers, is the complaints or the bad reviews that lawyers get are never, oh, you know, he was terrible in court, or I got the worst results ever, and it didn't go over well at all. It's always about communication or lack thereof, and real compatibility, right? So you can focus on taking everything that comes through the door, right? Or you can do what Doug is really talking about here, which is finding the right clients, excuse me, for you, so that it's enjoyable for both of you to work together. You know, like, you shouldn't just take on a client knowing that you can get the result if you know that you guys aren't going to get along the way. So I always see that, and I run into this problem constantly of people who just didn't really meld together.
Yeah. And whenever I'm working with lawyers on collecting their accounts receivable, and we use that as a way to look at some of the clients, and the comment always comes up, oh, I probably shouldn't have taken them. So at the time, it seemed like a good idea, or maybe the relationship goes sideways. And, you know, the truth is that nobody has ever made a buying decision based on logic. They don't care where you went to school. They don't care that you're trustworthy. Of course you're trustworthy. They don't care that you're competent. You better be competent. It's about the level of connection and emotional connection you have with them. So yeah, school might, if you went to the same school that they did, and that is an evidence of values, that could be a thing. But so much of lawyer marketing is hitting the intellectual side as if your clients make a decision based on logic, and they don't. So it is always possible to upgrade your clients. And when you niche down, I have several criminal defense lawyer clients who we went to, there are certain classes of felonies they were not going to do. They were going to do, but they, and my family lawyer client, his focus, his passion when we dug into it was protecting the children when relationships dissolve. And so that's his whole branding. He's focused on that. And once he focused on that, he upgraded his clients, he upgraded his fees, and he was able to get a lot more momentum. And then billing the hours is an issue.
So you mentioned before that I think the feast or famine problem is so prevalent with small practice attorneys, because I feel as though small practice attorneys don't see themselves as entrepreneurs and business people. So they have that fear of what happens if or when everything goes away, right? It just kind of feels unmanageable and it's going to topple on you. Why do they feel this way? And what can lawyers do, or how can they switch that mindset, right, to get to this more I'm only going to focus on the clients that really match with me?
You know, we're trying to change mindsets that were started way back in law school and beyond, when in an effort to encourage people to be lawyers, be professional, we made this artificial distinction between you're not a business, you're a profession. And it was an either or, black or white. And the truth is that lawyers are in a service business. Yes, we're professionals. We have professional code of conduct and different ways to behave, but it doesn't change the fact that we're in a service business. And it's allowing yourself to accept that that's a possibility, and that using the skills that businesses have to understand what the problems you solve for your clients, who you solve it for, and that you weren't meant to solve everyone's problem, allowing yourself to explore those principles, you can still be, and in fact, I'd argue you're more professional when you use those skills. I see this all the time with family lawyers. They get overwhelmed because, well, legal aid can't handle them, so I have to. And the way I bring them back to the conversation is, well, yeah, I get that you're a wonderful, compassionate person and you want to help a lot of people. But haven't you made a commitment already to all the people in your practice? Wow. And what happens when you say yes to everyone who you think needs you? What happens to the people who've already said yes to you? So when you're really clear on who you can serve and why you can serve them, you'll not only upgrade your practice, you'll do a better job for your clients. You'll have a better relationship with them. And there's this worry that if I go narrow, I somehow won't have enough clients to choose from. And the paradox is, I use the garden hose analogy, right? So if you just turn on the garden hose with no nozzle on it, you get a big flow of water. What happens if you put a really narrow nozzle on it? You get a lot of power out of it. And it's the same thing with focusing your clients.
Okay, so let's talk about how we do it. How do we get the nozzle? How do we turn the nozzle on onto the hose?
The great thing is, I'm working with lawyers who've been in practice for a while, so we don't have to make it up. It's not a blank sheet of paper. I have something called the client's matter analysis. I think it's a clever name. Maybe it's not, but it's a process to look back over your clients over the last several years, identify which matters and clients when you were at your best and when you were not. And this is what you really want. And then when we see the patterns over the last couple of years, we start to build a profile, yes, a profile of what that ideal client might look like. And then you've got a more objective way to evaluate clients and to focus your marketing. When you talk to your marketing or your web people, you don't have to say, if you're an estate planning lawyer, I do wills and trusts. Well, good for you. You could say, this is because your marketers want this, my client profile. And I help parents make sure their wishes are honored when they can no longer speak for themselves. And I protect my daughter against, my future ex-son-in-law, because those are the problems that people want solved. They don't actually want wills and trusts. People don't actually want a divorce. They want to start their life again. And so when you start using those words and talking in the words your clients use, you will upgrade your client base.
I love that. It's, I love it because it's such a mindset switch. It's, instead of I do wills and trust in estates, it's so much more than that. And it's really, people don't want to look at it like that. People don't want to say like, or look in the mirror and say like, oh, you know, I'm getting up there in age, better get a will. No, there's a reason that people have a why. You know, it's not just as cynical as we look at it most of the time. So
I love
um
I love author Simon Sinek, who wrote the book Start With Why. And he has a great TED talk. It's How Great Leaders Inspire Action. It's 18 minutes worth watching. And the idea I'm going to share is that people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it.
mhm.
They don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. So you see how this discipline's tied back to the first one and connecting with the why. There's amazing power in that.
So I think once you know the clients that you're looking for and the why, this is a good tie into the next thing, is you'll be on your way to developing a business system, right, that really attracts what you're looking for. So we're going to talk about the next thing here, which is getting things done through others. And then we're going to talk about delegation and leadership skills. So take it away.
Yeah. Nick, I think this is another thing where law firms have very much grasped onto over the years, the bespoke model of legal services, where every client is different, every situation is different, and almost as if there was an obligation to start from ground zero with each client. And I don't think that serves the client. It might generate more billable hours, but there needs to be a simple and repeatable system that you can teach to other people so that you as the lawyer can work at your highest and best level of skill. So if I mean, the situation I find is you're trying to make every decision yourself, you're spending a lot of time on non-legal work. How many of you are the first in the office and the last to leave? Bringing home work on nights and weekends, running late all the time. I see this all the time. My staff is constantly interrupting me. You have to go fix my staff. Like, maybe we should start with you. And I say that, you know, I don't mean to be crass, but if your staff is coming to interrupt you all the time, it's because they're not getting the direction that they need. And I see this, that my clients are constantly calling me to see what's going on with their case. And yeah, clients are needy and you're dealing with them in the most stressful points of their lives. But there are ways you can keep them up to date without you having to call them yourself.
Exactly.
And generating those calls. So if that sounds familiar, and you feel like the slide says, there's an opportunity when you fix this and you do what we weren't taught to do in law school, which is to manage other people and to lead. You can be more in control of your time. You can be focused. You can be on time. And you can be your best self, because remember I said a few minutes ago, Nick, that people make decisions emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
If you are stressed out, frantic, out of control, then your nonverbals communication is going to show that to people. And they're looking for someone who has got it all together that they can trust. And if you're operating at really high RPM, and they're going to perceive that you're not really in control, even if you don't think they can see it, right? We all know when we meet somebody like that, right?
That doesn't exactly inspire like great work from your employees too, right? Where, you know, if you come in and your boss is always frazzled and he's always deep in the weeds, you know, it doesn't feel enjoyable, and it doesn't get you to that area of that why you're doing what you're doing. So I actually am very curious to ask you, why do lawyers operate this way? Why do they feel the need to take ownership of even the smallest non-lawyer things in their businesses?
I think I've thought a lot about this, and many lawyers have perfectionist tendencies. They highly value control and being the one with knowledge. It's part of the personality traits of lawyers. There's also a lot of fear of making a mistake. and the consequences of making a mistake. I know the many lawyers, we call it practicing law. I have to remind clients that what's your standard of care? It's not perfection. It's not no mistakes. It's reasonable care for somebody of your level. So the mindset of I have to be in control, I have to make the decisions, the buck stops with me. And it's this lack of trust, in part because they never really learned how to separate tasks, to delegate effectively, to delegate without abdicating. There's a huge difference. And when you delegate, if you just fire and forget and you don't get the results you want, that may not be your employee's problem. So you put all these things together, and the most famous one is just faster to do it myself. It's just faster, which is fine. But if you're doing a task that takes only 10 minutes, I'll tell you it's not 10 minutes, it's probably 25. And if you're doing that 5-6 times a day, how many hours are you losing? So this fallacy that you have to be in control by doing it yourself is the big thing that holds lawyers back. And they haven't imagined the possibility of, if they take the slow down to make a system and train someone how to do it, and then hold them accountable to deliver it, that would actually accelerate their practice.
I'm going to interrupt you. I'm going to butcher the number, and
okay,
forgive me, but I'm going to butcher it. I'm going to get close because I should know these things. But in the Clio Legal Trends report, either in 2020 or 2019, they did a study on interrupting like a lawyer's workflow.
Yes.
And every time you experience an interruption, it takes you 15 minutes to get back into what you were doing before you got interrupted. So if you experience all these interruptions because you're trying to, I can do it faster if I just do it myself when it comes up onto my plate, as opposed to having like a delegated person or system that handles that sort of thing. You're not only wasting your own time, but you're really setting yourself back in the billable hour model. So I'm sorry to interrupt, but
oh no, I mean, I'm glad you mentioned it, because I did not remember that number from the Clio study, but this has been studied in industry, and the average is closer to 23 minutes. That's for every interruption. Good.
I told you I would butcher it.
That's okay. But the point is, just keep a tick sheet of how many times somebody else interrupts you, or how many times you interrupt yourself. And there's more interruptions than not. And it takes we could do a whole hour on multitasking, but your brain can't actually multitask. It can handle one cognitive function at a time. And yes, you can drive your car and sing a song at the same time, but that's habitual behavior that's instinctual. It's not higher level thinking. So all you're doing when you're multitasking is switching back and forth. And that you lose at least 15 minutes, maybe more, every single time you do that. So if you have the right team around you, and you have been intentional about how you block your time and the areas of responsibility you give them, then that creates focus time, which allows you to do the tasks that you have to do at a higher level.
Okay, so how do we do this, right? How do we set ourselves up to only do the things that we should be doing, and how to really let go and delegate the things that not only we shouldn't be doing, but that others might be better suited for?
Yes. Two cardinal rules. If it doesn't require a law degree, then you should probably be delegating it.
Okay. And
the corollary is, if it doesn't require you as a business owner to do it yourself, you should probably be delegating it. So you got to ask yourself, is this task I'm working on something that only I can do? And if yes, how come? Is it what we call an RGA, revenue generating activity? And if not, you should outsource it or delegate it. And a classic one is the client intake process, the initial screening.
Mm-hmm.
That can be done by a properly trained staff. And they can make it they can get to no, maybe, or yes. The yes people go to the top of your pile, the maybe people go between, and the no's you never see. And you have a system and they track that so you know what's happening. And then you've got a structure so that you are being as efficient as possible. The doctor model, when you go to the doctor and you see the receptionist and then the nurse and then the doc, it's kind of irritating, but it's super efficient.
Mm-hmm.
The other one that I see, Nick, is an accounts receivable. Lawyers feel like they need to follow up on the invoice.
I knew you were going to say this.
Guess what? They don't. So the best way to follow up on that is you train your staff, you give them a script, you help them understand things, and then they're the ones making the call. And you're only getting it if it's an exception. Well, what happens if my client's unhappy? They say. Okay, if your client has a problem with the bill, wouldn't you rather know about it? And your assistant, if I'm calling for Nick, I can say, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Tell me more. I will talk to Nick and we'll schedule a time. When's a good time to call you back?
Mm-hmm.
But now that assistant, that person on the phone, has diffused the issue. The client feels heard. And then you're going into the conversation ready. And this can happen with AR, almost all your bookkeeping and accounting. If you don't want to give somebody else the keys to your financial kingdom, they can still do the bookkeeping and you can do the transfers yourself if you must. Client inquiries, status updates, anything having to do with your website. Please don't spend your time learning how to do a website. Answering the phones, of course, you all do that. Nick, I see lawyers like, well, if I miss a phone call, I might miss a client. Yeah. You can have somebody else answer the phone for you, so you can actually have a night out with your spouse.
I always love the comparison that I seriously, even if I got like a ticket for jaywalking in the city, I would never, ever, ever, ever in my life try to represent myself in court, because I'm not qualified to, and because I know in my heart of hearts that lawyers, especially in that arena, are much smarter than me. And I promise you, as a guy who works on websites and knows a little bit of how they work and code and all that, I promise I am better than attorneys at that, unless that is your separate vocation. If you did one in your first life and then your second life you went to go be a lawyer or vice versa, then yes, you've absolutely got me. But there's something about knowing your limitations. And I want to talk about, so you were talking about like the client feeling heard on the phone.
Yeah.
And like if somebody has a problem, when you get really good at delegation and really empowering your employees, there will come a time where you won't even need to know about that conversation or have to address it. If, like you said, you get to a certain level of comfortability with an employee, you can empower them to handle that situation because you have an SOP, which we're going to talk about, that will, they follow the standard operating procedure, right? And they handle it the way that you want it handled. And it never has to come across your desk or interrupt what you're doing. And people can feel really empowered by that. So I'm moving on to the next one. We're going to talk about thinking like a CEO. This is probably my favorite one. And this is admittedly what Doug and I were discussing at length when trying to carve out what we were going to talk about. So I'm going to let you run with this one. I'm sorry for stealing.
Well, no, this is a team. This is teamwork now. I probably could do an hour on the CEO mindset. Excuse me. But the thing is, so many of the lawyers that I see came up as a lawyer in a vertical area, and they're really good at it. And then they wind up adding an associate, and then they wind up adding a partner, and they're still operating in their individual silos. And then they get big and they get bigger. And I'm not talking about 10 lawyers. You could have 2 or 3 lawyers. Mm-hmm. That level of business needs a different level of thinking. And it's like the pair of glasses you use to view the world. You need to update the prescription to think a little bit longer term. So, the CEO mindset is about thinking about your business as an entity, thinking ahead and planning where your business is going to go. So if you have a fixed mindset, you're trying to avoid challenges. If you're thinking about growth, you're saying, hey, that's a challenge. How many lawyers have thrived through COVID because they saw it as a challenge of something to push through, persist through a setback. And even this thing about energy, if we're evaluating, is that effort really worth it? Then you're not thinking like a CEO. I'm not saying you just take on things, but if you look at putting an effort as a path to becoming better at something, that I'm going to learn from criticism, I'm going to learn from failure, then you're starting to think like a CEO. And the founder's problem is kind of linked to the other stuff we're talking about. It's not allowing yourself to move in corporate speak from that vertical expert to that person that works across the business, that knows how all the pieces are connected, and is embracing the fact that, yeah, you've got to learn how to be a manager and how to be a leader, that creating the environment where people can feel safe and experience failure without, career-ending consequences. Your job as a CEO is to create that environment for your team to thrive. And that's hard for many attorneys who and professionals who have dismissed this whole idea of, quote, soft skills. That communication, yeah, I know how to communicate, I can go to court. Or persuasion, yeah, I can argue in court. And so what happens is their emotional intelligence isn't anywhere near as high as they need it to be. Their social intelligence isn't as high as they need it to be. So the idea in this is get comfortable with imperfection. It's just a natural state of things. Don't be afraid of going and maybe this is the thing, Nick. So many lawyers believe that their team expects them to have the answer. So they never want to say, I don't know. But some of the most powerful moments I've had with my teams is when we get to a complicated situation, for me to say, I don't know, let's figure it out together. And that's what they want. That's being a CEO. It's not being the infallible commander.
I hate, and I know hate is a strong word, but I hate having to go to somebody who has like no accountability. And I think the words I don't know are one of those things that really starts you on this path to being a better leader. But if you pretend that you do know, all of your credibility and your accountability just sails right out the window. And it like, if I go to you with say I work in your law firm, right? And I've never handled this one problem before. And I go to you and I say, I really don't know what I'm doing. And you sort of say like, oh yeah, I've been through this before. Haha, you don't know how to do that. I've done this before. You figure it out, get out of here, all this stuff. No, why don't you say, I also haven't been through that before. Why don't let's sit down, let's talk about this, and let's figure out how to do this together, as opposed to the other one where you're so dismissive and you have no account. Nobody wants to deal with anybody who doesn't have any personal accountability. And that's from my own experience in large corporations.
Yeah. And, I was meeting with an economic development director just this morning, and I haven't checked it out myself, but in the Savannah area, they've been looking ahead and saying, we're not producing, this labor shortage that we're having isn't going to get better. And she says, we're not, the economists are saying, we're not producing enough children to fill all the jobs that we have. So for those of us who are watching, the rest of your career, there's going to be a labor shortage. So that means your ability to think like a CEO, not like perfect, but a human, and to make connections and create the culture is going to be everything about retaining top talent. And so allowing yourself, this is why I love working with lawyers, because if we just open up that student mindset, yeah, I'm going to learn about how I can be a better CEO for my business. I'm going to be open to the possibility, maybe with a beginner's mind, that I don't know everything, but I'm determined to learn, because as a lawyer, I'm a great problem solver. I'm a great learner. If you can get there, then you can become a great CEO. It's not a born talent. It's a learned skill. And your leadership style is everything.
Okay. So I do want to ask you specifically about that. So let's talk like actionable things that we can do in order to become like a CEO mindset, right? How do we switch the mindset, and how do we become that leader that we're talking about?
Wow, I used to teach whole courses on this, and we've got just a few minutes, but I think the most important first step is to get in touch with what your leadership style is, because Dan Goleman has done a great study, and there's a lot written on the effect of the leadership style on team culture. And he talks about 6 different leadership styles, and there's a correlation to the culture. And the trick is that all the styles are appropriate sometimes. It's matching the style to the situation. So one of the things I have that I can send to people who registered is a description of what those leadership styles are, and a little quiz to help you get in touch with what is your default style. And there's nothing wrong with a default style. You have to be aware of what it is. So if you really want to be the CEO, and you can get aware of your leadership styles, the bigger theme is to be really intentional about being aware of your surroundings and your people, and building your emotional intelligence, which is your ability to perceive what's really going on around you, so that you can adapt. Because when you're the head of a law firm, or even the best leaders wind up in a bubble where people will not really tell them the truth. So you have to be super aware, and having an outside resource of somebody you can talk to is enormously valuable. So I used to say, as when I was C-level executive, is if everybody starts agreeing with me, I have a problem.
Yep. What are they? Is that called the CEO complex, or CEO? There's like a term for that where CEO syndrome. That's what it is, where everybody agrees with you and nobody wants to tell you the truth about what's really going on. But we are up against the clock here, so I want to get to number 5.
Let's get to number 5.
Here's my favorite: the power of SOPs. And I'll tell you why it's my favorite after Doug is done teaching us about SOPs.
So I see so many lawyers who hate SOPs. I even did a poll on LinkedIn about this, and people think SOPs they hold you back and they're rigid, and I don't want them because I want the freedom to do whatever I want. 80% of the activities in your business can be reduced to SOPs. At least 80%, maybe more like 90, which leaves you, when that runs on a standard procedure that you can tweak and train to and use to delegate, think of the bandwidth that frees up to actually do value creating legal work. So if everything is taking longer than it should, you're seeing mistakes over and over again, your staff is stressed out, you're thinking maybe I should just fire them all and start over again, I'm not getting paid on time, then you should be looking to what can I standardize? Even if it's one little thing within a process. Start small, find something specific so that you can accelerate. People don't like the McDonald's analogy because they feel like it's somehow beneath lawyers. But there's a reason why you get the same result at every single restaurant. It's SOPs.
I have a client who I worked with years and years and years ago. He's very successful. He's a traffic ticket attorney in I want to say in like South Jersey area, but East Coast, around my area, New York, tri-state, whatever. And he has my favorite process of a law firm probably ever, because I'm still convinced to this day, he doesn't run a law firm. He runs a traffic ticket business. And he has a lot of lawyers that work for him, coincidentally. So what happens is people call into his firm. He has intake professionals, people who it's their sole job to perform a legal intake on a client, really hear the matter that's going on because the person wants to be heard, right? And when you do that, you get, oh, I got a question here. I want to answer this too.
You build loyalty.
Not only that, but when you have a real severe understanding of the problem at hand, you're going to be able to handle it better than like if you just dismiss that person as just having a problem. So he does that. And then they'll explain the process to the client. This is my favorite. And the process is always the same. You don't have to go to court. We're going to handle this for you. Here's what I need you to do. You send me a copy of your ticket. Fill out this form, which is all the information that we need to go do it. The court date, right? And we will let you know how it goes, right? And we'll be in constant contact with you the entire time. So right before the court date, like the day before, they'll write to the person, hey, we're getting ready to go for you tomorrow. We'll let you know how it goes. The day of, just a reminder, we're going to handle this for you. We've got all the confidence in the world. Hey, this is the result we got for you. Awesome. Here's the bill or whatever, right?
Because people want their problem solved.
Yes, but they also want to be brought along for the ride.
Of course they do.
They want to know the process that they're going to go through. So I'm going to read this question. David.
Yeah, this is a great question. And because I got a good, I work out of my global headquarters above my garage, so I can give you an answer there. Go ahead.
I want to read it out loud for everybody. So as a sole practitioner who has worked from a home office for about 15 years, many of the issues you have covered can be amplified and even get more blurred as a result of working in the home environment. So what would be a couple of suggestions that you might make to address this unique model where you do everything from the stuff, from stuffing the envelopes to writing the trial briefs in such a work environment without a support staff?
Yeah, what a great question. So even if you're a solo practitioner like David's question, the first thing is to try to batch and segment your day so that you're putting like tasks together. So identify the most value-added tasks that are the most important, like first thing in the morning, and put those tasks together in those blocks. And that can, so you might, and one morning I might have my accounting hat on, and then another day I might have my marketing hat on. So that's one thing. The other thing, and the beautiful thing about where we are in 2021 headed into 2022 is, part of my business is I post a lot on social media. I do a blog, I do a lot of writing, I do a lot of speaking, I do videos. And I was having the same problem. So I found a virtual assistant and I had to write SOPs. Writing SOPs, there's no magic to it. It's just like writing step-by-step instructions, but it requires you to break the different tasks apart, which is good because lawyers know how to do that. And then I was able to gradually wrest some of my fear of control and build a relationship with the VA where now I write things. I send it to her, she edits, she gives me graphics, and I approve it and she posts, because that's not a high value activity for me. My high value activity is coaching and training. So for David's question, which are the highest values activities? And then watch out for the trap that I don't have staff and I can't afford it. Because two things. One, lawyers generally run massively undercapitalized businesses. We will not invest in ourselves, but a guy opening a sandwich shop down the street will take down a lease and furnish a kitchen before he sold his first sandwich. And if you're billing out $150 an hour and you can get a $25 an hour person to do some of that work for you remotely, how long does that take to pay for itself? Not very long. So the cost of support, if you look at it as an investment, always makes sense. And if, like Nick, with what you all do, if you're spending your time worried about answering the phone and you are constantly getting interrupted, having somebody like an Answering Legal that can be your front office so that you can have that focus time is critically important. Because the truth is, if you were in court, they couldn't talk to you either. So in the home environment, batching, if you're writing trial briefs, maybe there's someone that can do some of the research for you. Maybe there's a tool that you can use so that it's being more automated. Billing. Maybe there's a way you can use a billing software to automate that process, so you're not manually typing in bills and you're sending automated reminders to people. So whether you're a solo practitioner or running a firm, we're coming up at the end of a month. Start keeping track of the non-billable things you do. What are the steps and how long are they taking you? And then once you've got that down on paper, you can look at it and say, how could I delegate that thing? Oh, and wait, there's 3 things that look kind of like that. How could I find somebody to help me? And with technology, you don't have to physically be in the same space. There are even mailing services that will, the stuffing envelopes, maybe that's done after 5 o'clock when you're, I wouldn't stuff envelopes first thing in the morning. That's 2 in the afternoon when your energy's at its lowest. And I do a fair amount of work with solo practitioners trying to figure out how to get from doing work all by themselves to how to leverage their time so they could do things like, well, I don't know, have a vacation. So don't assume that because you're solo that you can't leverage some of these strategies. And in fact, the SOP strategy especially is critically important when you're trying to do everything yourself.
Doug, I think you absolutely smacked that question out of the park. And I want to do for anybody that thinks that like Doug or myself is this like crazy guru who just knows all this stuff inherently, and we're not subject to the same thing. Like Doug has a virtual assistant that he uses, and I run the marketing department for this entire company, right? Dave knows us. Dave, I'm pretty sure, is a customer of mine from my sales days back in the day. But I outsource a bunch of things that I do. I have people who create my graphics for my advertising. I have a development team because I'm not the best developer in the world, and they don't work here. They're outsourced. They're on a per needed basis, but we have a rapport, right? Like Doug says, where there's a standard operating procedure. I send out this thing that needs to get done. I pay X amount for it. And I know how much money I'm going to make back for it because I've had all this stuff written out. And it allows me to do the stuff that's most important to my business and my role here. So that's the look behind the curtain, right? Is that we're subject to these same things, and we're preaching from a place of we have to do all this stuff too. So don't feel like you're a sole practitioner that's so different. It's not. It's we're all human, fallible. We need help.
Yeah, my business is we're boutique. I work with a very small number of clients, and I want to leave you on this delegation and SOP with something that my business partner, who also wrote The Power Principles of Time Mastery, Walt Hampton, continues to encourage me with, because I suffer from some of the same lawyer habits that you do. I just been doing it longer, perhaps. Is when you're delegating, your job is not to teach them how to do it if you're outsourcing it. Your job is to be clear what needs to happen. So if I have my VA, I need graphics, and I described her what I need, I'm not teaching her how to do that. She's delivering. If I'm saying I want to have it posted by 10 o'clock on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, I'm not teaching her how to do that. I'm just identifying what the requirement is, and she's making it happen. So as you're looking at SOPs and finding qualified people to be on your team, and that includes a bookkeeper. If your bookkeeper doesn't know how to close the books at the end of the month and reconcile, they should not be a bookkeeper. That's not your job. What do you need done, not how. And this is not an all or nothing. You can take little steps. You can take first steps to see the power it can give you. I resisted, Nick, my VA for a long time until I realized that I had to follow my own advice because I was wasting hours. It was, oh, it's just simple. I'll post something. And then I just wasn't doing it because it felt like it took too long. Like, okay, I got to outsource this.
I did the same thing. I tried to teach myself how to write React JavaScript for my website, and it was not sustainable at all. I was spending much more time during the day trying to learn how to code as opposed to, setting up a process and getting that delivered to me the way that I need it while I could do other things and really like oversee how that was going. So I want to, before we end this, right? Because I know you have, I want you to read this end thing that we have set up here. The questions are open, and I want to reiterate to anybody that is here that this is recorded, and you will all be receiving a copy of this automatically once we edit out the beginning for like waiting purposes. So that'll come out probably early next week if you want it. Otherwise, yeah, we both really appreciate you joining us. Let me go to this next one. I'm sure that there is, oh yeah, closing thoughts, right?
Yeah. So at the end of the day, nobody's going to wish that we had more time in the office, build more hours, accumulated more miles, closed more deals, sold more stuff, networked more, or did more Facebook updates. What's going to matter is the experience that we had, the lives we touched, the love that we've shared, and the impact we've made on the world. So we're blessed to have an amazing profession to provide huge impact to people's lives. You deserve the opportunity to run a really effective practice that serves your life and not have your life in service to your practice. You deserve to have both. That's what you probably wanted when you left from law school. You do not have to do this alone. In fact, it's a pretty darn lonely business. So get help. And if you've got the slide up there, if you want to know more from Nick about how Answering Legal can help you, call him up. If you want to have learn more about what I do, how I might be able to help you in your practice, send me an email, doug@summit-success.com, or do summit-success.com/call Doug, because I have an automated scheduler that can let you pick a time. So we don't go back and forth on the phone call a lot. Don't leave next year to chance. We've got like this once in a generation opportunity coming up now and in 2022 for growth and revenue and profit and peace of mind. And don't wait till you're retired to wonder what if. I don't want anybody to wonder what if. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it, Nick.
Invest in yourself. That's my takeaway from this. But again, seriously, thank you everybody who joined. Thank you everybody who's watching this after the fact who couldn't make it. There were a lot of registrants for this, and we'll be in touch with all of you. And if you want some, like bonus extra help, what do you call that when you go like see the teacher after school? Is that extra help? From either Doug
office hours.
Office hours.
Watch your email box next week, because of some of the things I mentioned, the Clients Matter assessment and the planning tools. Watch your email box next week or after you view this video, and you'll see some of those things coming from me in your inbox.
Awesome. Doug, I love you, man. You did such a great job. I
appreciate, I'm grateful for the opportunity to help people, Nick.
Me too. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us, and we'll be in touch.
All right. Bye for now.